It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we got up today to the truth over on Truth Social. And I'm sure a lot of people retruth the truth of the truth teller. You know, what a joke. But anyway, Donald Trump is truthed out that he's the target. Got a special letter from Jack Smith saying he's the target of a grand jury investigation because, hey, he kind of tried to overthrow the 2020 election, did a couple of things, led to that little, powwow thing where they, defecated on the floor of our Capitol and, did all that stuff. The perfectly fine day of walking between the ropes. You've heard about it. Now, what's interesting to me is you look at all of the indictments that are now rolling in, Republicans still defending poor Donald. I wonder when that flip happens. But here to share some thoughts on their report, and they've got a great report out today. And I got to wonder if there was some rolling of the dice, some crystal ball kind of thinking, because the folks over at Crew, they've got a new report saying that, Donald Trump should be disqualified because of the 14th Amendment. And that's why I've asked Donald K. Sherman to come talk with us. He's the executive vice president and chief counsel for the folks at Crew, the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. You can check out their website, citizensforethics.org. Donald, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start right with this. Why do you think he shouldn't be allowed to run? What precludes him in this moment?
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone knows many of the qualifications and disqualifications for serving as president. You have to be a natural-born citizen. You have to be 35 years old. You can't have been elected twice to serve as president or serve 2 terms. Lesser known is codified in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It's called the Disqualification Clause, and it says if you took an oath to defend the Constitution and engaged in an insurrection against it, you are banned or disqualified from serving as a state or federal officer. Sadly, it seems tailor-made for the situation that Donald Trump has once again put us in. He is someone who everybody saw take an oath to defend the Constitution on January 20th, 2017, as an officer of the United States. It is commonly understood, including by Donald Trump's own impeachment lawyers, that January 6th was an insurrection. And it is also commonly understood, including by bipartisan votes in the House and the Senate, the January 6th committee, federal judges appointed by Republicans and Democrats, that Donald Trump was the central cause of the insurrection. This is, not rocket science. It is in many ways, 2 + 2 = 4. Donald Trump is disqualified from serving as a federal officer, as a governor, as president of the United States under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
Shouldn't that only be, though, if he's been convicted? I mean, there's a lot of where's the conviction? My right-wing friends would ask. Where's the presumed innocent until proven guilty? Where's that in this report?
Well, I think your right-wing friends might say that there wasn't an insurrection.
No, they truly believe it was a peaceful day. It was a family day, I was told. It was like a kind of a picnicky atmosphere.
But I will tell you, in the aftermath of the Civil War, the Reconstruction Congress wrestled with this issue and concluded that no criminal conviction was needed to be disqualified from office. Again, it's not a criminal punishment. It just says that you are not eligible to serve, just in the same way that somebody that's 25 years old is ineligible to serve. Funnily enough, just in the same way that the former president suggested that President Obama was not eligible to serve, lying and claiming that he wasn't a natural born citizen in the United States. It's not a penalty. It's not a punishment. It is a qualification for office, or a disqualification in this instance. So you challenge his eligibility on the ballot, much like lots of people do, much like happens in every election in every state in this country every year that there is an election. And you go to court and you prove by a preponderance of evidence that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. And under Section 3, that's the end of the story. You don't need a criminal conviction. And we proved that last year when we removed someone from office, Coy Griffin, who founded Cowboys for Trump in New Mexico. And we sued and got him removed from office in a civil case based on his participation in the insurrection. So there is not just precedent that's 150 years old, but there's precedent that is a few months old, confirming that you don't need to be criminally convicted of a crime of insurrection or any crime related to insurrection in order to be removed or disqualified from office.
Yeah, I'm in a weird spot here, Donald, because I'll be honest with you. I don't ever want him anywhere near the White House. I don't think he should be even allowed to take the tour, let alone sit in the Oval Office. But there's still this part of me that goes, he has to be beaten at the ballot box for the good of the country, and for the the good of the future of this country. He has to be beaten soundly at the ballot box, where we as Americans say, you know what, this isn't who we are. But I get the point, and I get what you're saying. I'm still in this place where I think he's got to be beaten at the box.
So I mean, I would point out that he was beaten at the box by some 7 million plus votes, and then he staged an insurrection to overthrow a free and fair election. So the idea that like he needs to be beaten at the ballot box, and that like that happened already, and he was repudiated by the voters. The reason we're in this place and the reason he's disqualified is because he refused to accept the results of a free and fair election, spread lies, recruited people to come to the Capitol and be violent and fight like hell at the Capitol. And we almost lost members of Congress. We almost lost our vice president because of it. The Constitution says you don't get a second chance to do that, right? And again, I think I'm less worried about the next election or the next two elections. I'm more worried about 50, 100 years from now. God forbid we are in this place again. Thankfully, when we looked at the case law, there were examples, numerous examples of people disqualified after the Civil War for engaging in insurrection against this government. I want to make sure that if we are in this place, if our democracy is in this place, long after we are gone, that there is a historical record and legal precedence that Donald Trump was held accountable in this way, and that you can't engage in insurrection and then just submit and then run for president again.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, Donald. But I over the weekend, I don't know if you saw the quote from Vivek Ramaswamy, who said basically January 6th. Was a friendly preview of what's to come. So I hear what you're saying, but my fear, I keep coming back to this place where the Republicans, and I know you're a nonpartisan group, you're straight down the middle of the group, the line group, but I look at the defense of Donald Trump from the Republicans, very few voices coming out and speaking out against him. The justification that somehow we're weaponizing every agency to go after him, and now Ramaswamy saying, hey, that January 6th thing, that was just a friendly preview. Get ready for the main event. I'm in a weird kind of fear pattern. And my concern then comes, if we disqualify him, boom, everything explodes. Any thoughts on that?
Well, again, I look at this as someone who questioned the results of an election that he won, right? And then spread lies and misinformation and incited an insurrection in an election that he lost. The idea that we just narrowly missed, again, members of Congress being attacked and killed on the floor. I mean, you heard those testimonials. You saw video of members cowering in fear. Capitol police officers being crushed by Donald Trump's mob, members of Congress calling their family and telling them goodbye, the vice president of the United States of his own party, of his own choosing, being ferried away to a secret location to protect him from Donald Trump's mob. We were we had a razor thin miss here of losing members of our government and losing our entire government. And the idea that we should just shrug our shoulders and hope that this election is the one that Donald Trump actually accepts just doesn't, it passes credulity. Right? The idea that we would not use every legal tool in our toolkit to hold him accountable and ensure that this doesn't happen again, not just in 2024 again, but 50, 100 years from now. Like, this is where we have to draw the line, if nowhere else.
No. I mean, the crack pottery that came out of 2020. I mean, the idea that Eastman came up with, and all of the thoughts that were being kicked around the room as possibilities, the possibility of the vice president not certifying an election, and look, the savior of the country being being in the hands of a guy who couldn't spell potato is quite frightening to me. I got to be honest, Donald. When it's I never thought we'd be here. I don't think anyone thought we would be here, and again, we have to remind ourselves. Donald Trump has forced us into this position, right? He forced Mike Pence to stand in the breach, to, be the person to finally say no, that I won't overturn this election. He forced Capitol police officers, the law enforcement who were under attack, to hold the line. And he's forcing us, by choosing to run again, despite obviously being disqualified, to draw a line in the sand and say, no, this tool was built for this moment. And if we don't use it here against the former president, then it really can't be used again going forward. And this tool that Congress and the states thought was so important that they ratified, that they amended the Constitution to include, will essentially become inert because we are worried about Donald Trump doing the things that we already know that he's capable of doing. No, you're right. You're right on. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Donald K. Sherman. He's the Executive Vice President and Chief Counsel with Crew, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. You can check out their website, citizensforethics.org. We'll get links out on social media. So you've got this idea. You've got this this report out. What are the chances of someone moving on this, and what can we do to help move this forward? Because look, I know a lot of people who don't want him to run for re-election because of the fear that, who knows, he might get elected and then pardon himself for all of the crimes that he's committed, even though we're not sure he can do that either. But that, I'm sure, will not stop him. What are the chances?
Well, look, we know two things happen in the two times that Donald Trump ran for election. The first is he won, and he shredded all our ethical norms and rules and the Constitution. And the second, he lost and incited an insurrection against our government to overturn a free and fair election in violation of the Constitution. Those are the two likeliest outcomes here. You asked, what's the next step? Well, we're going to take legal action as soon as it is legally and strategically viable for us to do so in order to enforce Section 3 against him. Again, we've brought litigation like this before in New Mexico and won the first case in over 150 years using Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the first case where a court decided as a matter of law that January 6th was an insurrection under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and we are preparing to do that again. This is a moment where, where people of goodwill have to stand up and use all of the legal tools available to say no. And to ensure that the Constitution is enforced in the way that the drafters of Section 3 intended.
Well, it's going to be interesting, and I'm behind you. I hope the best. I want this to happen. I don't have a lot of faith in our Supreme Court. Because let me ask you that. I mean, do you have much faith in our Supreme Court to make the right call on something like this? Because ultimately, this is where it goes. No.
So I think a couple of things about the Supreme Court. One, they have scrupulously avoided January 6 cases, which suggests to me that they have, except for Thompson v. Trump, where they rejected the appeal and allowed the January 6th committee to get key documents. So I think there's some there's some hope there, but also it's important to remember the Supreme Court itself was under threat on in the days leading up to January 6th, and certainly it's likely that they were under threat on January 6th. But also, these justices have life tenure. And so, I think they're insulated from some of the influences that we've seen in other situations. I think they are insulated from with respect to the former president. Yeah. And it seems clear that their tack on January 6th has not followed the same ideological sort of disputes that other issues have. So we are confident that we can bring a case that will win. And we like our chances at the Supreme Court because we believe strongly that the Constitution's on our side.
Good stuff. Donald, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Best of luck. I hope you come back and talk to us again as this continues down the road.
Happily. Thank you so much for calling attention to this.
Appreciate the time. Again, Donald K. Sherman, he's the executive director, executive vice president, and chief counsel over at CREW, Citizens for Ethics in Washington, Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Citizensforethics.org, the website. We'll get links out on social media. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. After years of politicians talking about it, they finally passed a big new infrastructure package to rebuild roads and bridges, fix drinking water systems, and make the energy grid more secure. We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice as Americans.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
So Lauren in Santa Fe sent me an email, a lengthy email. Wow, lots of talking points in there, but the gist of it being that everyone's out to get Trump, all the agencies have been weaponized. It's the same talking points you get, and my response to this is always, look, if it were one thing, and you go, they were going after him for one thing, you go, okay, yeah, you could make the argument that someone was out to get him. It's kind of like, I got a friend who's been married 5 times. And the first time you go, yeah, okay, it was the wife's, it was her fault. Second time you go, okay, maybe it was her fault. Third time, yeah. Fourth time, it's you, buddy. Fifth time, definitely you. There's no conspiracy. It's not all women are out to get you. No, you're an idiot. You're responsible in this. And this is how I see this whole Trump thing. Not everyone's out to get him. He's just done a lot of really dumb, bad stuff. Let's go to the phones. I got Steve in Chicago on line 1. Steve, how you doing today?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Great. Thank you for taking my call. So I wanted to raise a point about this whole question of third parties. And given the impact of someone like Jill Stein in 2016, of Ralph Nader in 2000, Ross Perot in 1992. I mean, these third-party challenges to mainstream politics, I mean, usually they're just a fly, a pimple on the back of our body politic. But in these cases, these are people who literally could have given the election to the other side. I mean, we're talking about predictions going forward as far as 2024 that possibly 150,000 voters will decide those races in key states and the election.
Yep.
And, somebody running on a third-party ticket, be it a Cornell West or what have you, it can just pull away a few tens of thousands of votes, enough to give it to Donald Trump if he is the nominee. And so I am tired of people who are making this argument that, oh, you know what, the Democratic and Republican parties are pretty much the two sides of the same coin. Okay, no, Donald Trump taught us that that's not the case.
Nope.
If you think this country and the Supreme Court would look the same way had Hillary Clinton been the president, then you're delusional. So, it's time that we just stand up to people and say, this is not a political science seminar. This is the real world. You're not going to get everything that you want, but if you allow Donald Trump to win, you're not going to get anything that you want, and we're going to go backwards.
No, you're spot on. And look, I'm not opposed to third-party runs in places where, like Illinois, for instance, where you're blue state. I like the fact that people are getting out, pushing ideas and issues and pushing the main parties in directions. But when you're talking about Wisconsin, you're talking about Michigan, my state of Pennsylvania, where you're right, a couple of thousand votes one way or another swings an election, and we end up with a George W. Bush, and we end up with all of the things that came out of that. We end up with a Donald Trump. I'm right there with you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the call. No, because here's the thing, and look, you've got the no labels people right now who are saying, no, we're gonna have a Democrat and a Republican run on the same ticket, knowing that they're gonna pull votes away from Democrats. Because those moderate Republicans who moved over to vote for Biden and against Trump, that was the difference in the last election. I know a lot of people are, no, young people came out, those came out. No, it was I always say it's the 5% of the least active, least engaged, least informed voters who decide every election, because they're the ones who flip back and forth. A lot of people are there in their camps. They have their ideology, and it's those undecideds who, well, I'll flip a coin, or he looks better, or whatever the reason for voting is. And this is where these third way, no labels, this is where these groups thrive, because they know they can swing with just a small amount of the electorate. They can swing elections. And I know a lot of my Ralph Nader friends, and I like Ralph Nader. I met him once, good guy, smart guy. But Florida was what Florida was. This is a different country if Al Gore is president. This is a much different country if George W. Bush is not the guy, and all of the things that happened during his 8 years. This is a much different country if you don't have the Bernie bro folks and the people who are like, we're going to burn it all down because I hate Hillary. Look, I was not a Hillary fan, but I knew how bad Donald Trump was going to be. This would be a very different country, very different policies. And this is where I keep coming back to the idea that the working class has to come together and elect good, smart people. And I think Joe Biden in this moment is the best guy. The fact that we are rebuilding our infrastructure, we are reshoring manufacturing. We've got a president who's saying, hey, we should be reunionizing this country. We should be fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, opportunities. Now, look, I think the Republican establishment, the backroom people, I think they know Trump is toast. And they're doing everything that they can to, for instance, one of Trump's ex-cabinet members, Wilbur Ross, former Commerce Secretary, he's pulling together top donors to get Glenn Youngkin in. Youngkin's the scary guy because they think him in his sweater vest are gonna attract a lot of people. There's a $40 million ad buy happening for Tim Scott from a super PAC because, hey, we're gonna put him out there because the moneyed interests on the right don't think Trump is their guy. The problem is they lost control of the people they were outraging. They lost control of the flock. Now, as I understand, only 6 people on the Republican side have qualified for the RNC's upcoming debates. Trump, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Chris Christie, and Tim Scott. Should be interesting. I'm under the impression Trump is not going to show up, and I got to tell you, if I were him, I wouldn't either. So it'll be interesting to watch them attack each other and go from there. But no, seriously, this is the third way. No labels. All those people, even the Green Party. Look, I love Cornel West. I think it's a huge mistake because you will pull votes away in key areas, and that I don't want to wake up the morning after election day going, oh, happened again. We got somebody crazy. Want to hear your thoughts, though? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Are you convinced by the idea that we need to get a bipartisan presidentship, a Democrat and a Republican in office, and then who would be the top of the ticket? That would be the other question. And will Joe Manchin be the guy? Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage. Was real difficult to make a living. And then the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind, the union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case, and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At The Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right, left, or red, blue, when they are and always have been up, down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.